Hi, welcome to the Coding Dude channel. I'm Noah Reef. This is the next installation in our Introduction to Python tutorial series here on the channel. Um, Last time, as a quick review, we covered what were conditional statements and logical operators. So um, some of the basic ones that we covered were and, or, and not, as well as the equality operator, which we said differed from the assignment operator, which was just one equal sign. Two equal signs meant are these two things equal? For and, we covered how in order for an and statement to be true, both conditions or however many conditions within the and statement have to be true. So for example, my name is Noah and I have blue eyes would be a true statement because both my name is Noah and my eyes are blue. If one of those statements were false, like if I said my name was David, or if I had said that I had green eyes, then the statement would have been false. Or it only requires that one of the conditions be true. So if I said my name is Noah or I have green eyes, it still would be a true statement because though I don't have green eyes, my name is indeed Noah. And then not simply gets the converse of the truth value. So if a statement was true, then not would just make it false, and vice versa. In conditional statements, basically we covered that they are um, statements that when a condition is met, it will execute a block of code. So here, for example, I just arbitrarily have it set to 2, but we have this variable x. And in our first line here, it's going to check if either x is, the check that x is less than 3 and also less than 4. So 2, for example, would fit it. If it isn't, then it's going to check if x is equal to 5 or if x is equal to 6. And if it is, then it will say goodbye. And then if none of these other ones were met, then it's just going to print sorry. So to kind of see this, we can put for like x is equal to 1. If we run it, it says hello because it will check and say, okay, well, 1 is less than 3 and it is less than 4. So we're going to see it say hello. Um, if I go ahead and set it to 5 and run it, it's going to print goodbye because 5 isn't less than 3 and it's not less than 4, so this line isn't going to run. Here, x is equal to 5. It isn't equal to 6, but since this statement right here is true, it's going to print goodbye. And then if I make this 7 and run it, then it's just going to print sorry because 7 isn't less than 3 and less than 4. 7 isn't equal to 5 or equal to 6. So the last thing it's going to do then is just do this default else statement, which prints sorry. So that was just kind of a brief review of the logical operators and conditional statements. In today's video, we're going to just simply um, cover loops. And this should be a relatively shorter video just because loops are a very concise idea in coding. Oops. Um, Basically, um, loops will execute a certain block of code as many times as a certain condition is set to be true. So it's similar to conditional statements where we have this condition and a block of code that will only execute when this condition is met, but loops have this additive effect that it will keep executing this block of code as long as the condition is true as well. So there's two main types of loops. Um, there is the uh, one is the while loop, and then the second main type is the for loop in Python. There is another type that you can see in other programming languages, but these are the two main ones that you can see in Python. For the while loop, it's going to execute a block of code for as while the condition is true. And the for loop will execute a block of code for n number of times. So these two kind of seem similar in what they do, but a while loop basically has no expectation for when it's going to be done. A for loop, however, kind of has this set constraint for how long it's going to keep running. So um, one way that we can kind of cover this and think about this um, is just a basic like while true, which this will give us an infinite loop, and you'll see why soon. If I were to write this, here we have this while statement, and right now it's just default hard coded to be true. And so while this statement is true, it's just going to print out hello. So if I run it, um, it's hard to see here, but basically, it is going to keep printing hello forever and forever. And you kind of see this little thing going back up because there's more hello statements, because it's just going to keep printing hello while it is true. So I'm going to just exit out of this. Do I have, I forget the, here we're just going to go ahead and interrupt it by just changing that to false. Okay. Um, so that's an infinite loop because it's going to permanently stay true. So it's just going to keep on doing this thing, well, forever, because it's permanently going to be true. So how do we prevent it from doing something like that? Here we have a pretty basic example of a while loop right here. And we have this variable called I, when it's set equal to 0, and we say, well, while I is less than 3, we're going to print hello. And then this is the increment operator where we're going to add 1 to our variable I. So um, what I would propose of how our code is going to work is that the first time it runs, it's going to check if I is less than 3. And we know that we start with I being set to 0. 0 is less than 3, so it's going to execute this block of code, which is going to print hello, and then it's going to add 1 to I. So now I is going to equal 1 the first time it runs. Then it's going to, this is the end of the block, so it's going to go back to the top and check, well, we set it now equal to 1, is less than 3. That's true, so we're going to print hello again and add 1 to I. I was 1, so adding 1 to 1 is now 2. We're going to go back to the top. 2 is less than 3, which makes this true. We're going to print hello and add 1 to I, which was 2, so adding 1 to 2 makes it 3. Now, when we go back to the top, 3 isn't less than 3, making it false, and it's going to exit out of this block of code. So I would propose that it's going to print the word hello at least 3 times. So if we run it, here we can see that it prints hello 3 different times. And to sort of see how this is working as well, we can go ahead and just to kind of show what I was referring to, if I go ahead and say I is equal to, and then I'm going to use concatenation and go ahead and add the variable I. And if we run it, here you can see it starts with I being equal to 0, I equal to 1, I equal to 2, and then it never does it the third time because the third time this condition is false, so it never executes this particular block of code. Now, for a for loop, it's something similar. We would write for, and then kind of like before where we had that variable I, we can put another variable name. It doesn't have to be I, it could be anything. Usually I or J are usually good for counting um, something. And we can say for I, and then we're going to go ahead and say in range, um, and we're going to do it for 3. And this function, by the way, range, it returns something. Basically, we'll get more into what it's returning later down the road, especially when we cover lists. But for right now, the only thing to know is that range is basically telling, it's sort of like the equivalent of like when I is less than 3 from our while loop. But in this case, it starts from 0 and it just says, well, I starts from 0 and goes up to, but not includes 3. Right, and by default, I starts at 0. It's a little bit weird, but it's the same kind of concept. of what we did with the while loop, but I'll get more into this in a future video, and especially what a list is and what range is actually returning. Um, but we're going to go ahead and just print hello. And I would argue again, this is going to go ahead and print hello 3 times. So we can see it prints out hello. And just sort of to build off that same idea, we can go ahead and print I is equal to, and then do our concatenation again. Remember that we have to cast I as a string because it's an integer. And so when we run it, here we can see it again. That range is really producing 0, 1, and 2, but it does not include 3. And even if we extend this to 4, it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, but it never makes it to 4, which we'll cover more about what that is with lists later down the road. For for loops, though, you can do even something a little bit more creative. So it doesn't, the name of the variable that you're using to count or increment through, it doesn't have to be a single character. You can say for letter in, and then we can go ahead and maybe give it a string like hello, and then we can go ahead and print the letter. What this will do here is that instead of it being some number, I told it in the string hello. And so it's basically going to go through each different character in the word hello, and we'll actually make that what the variable letter is each time it goes through. So here, the first time it runs, letter will be H. The second time it runs, letter will be E, and then L, and then L, and then O. And here we have hello, but vertically. There's a whole slew more of things that you can do with loops, but this is just sort of a general introduction to loops. Well, I know this was a little bit of a shorter video, and I suspect that the next video will also be quite short as well. But I hope that this was pretty informative. If you found it informative, please give the video a like, and please subscribe to keep updated with the channel when I put out new videos, especially with our Introduction to Python series. So thank you, and have a good one.